Hello and welcome to my look at the Prismatic Evolutions set, which comes out later this week. So hopefully I've had time to put all this together before the set comes out. Prismatic Evolutions is the first set of 2025, and it is looking likely to be the final set in the 24 to 25 standard rotation. Our new cards come from a combination of the Terastal Festival and Starter Deck Generations products in Japan, and is also bulked up by a healthy collection of reprints of meta-relevant cards. Featuring a new batch of full art evolutions, and for the first time in English as far as I can tell, the Pokeball and Master Ball reverse holo patterns. This set is already shaping up to be the investor's wet dream, but will it make a difference in the TCG meta? We'll kick things off with the stars of the set, the evolutions. First up, we have Eevee EX, the first EX Pokemon that has been released, which is capable of evolving thanks to its Rainbow DNA ability. Unlike the single prize Eevee from Surging Sparks, this one isn't capable of evolving the turn it gets played, but it is a Terra Pokemon, meaning you can power it up with a Glass Trumpet and it activates Area 0 Underdepths. If you're planning to run a variety of Eevee evolutions with a variety of different energies, this card will be very important to build your deck around. But if you're just planning to use a single evolution in a standard deck, then the single prize one's ability to instantly evolve is probably much more valuable, as you'll usually have an energy acceleration method built into your deck. Crispin is also a great option for powering up any Terra Pokemon, so putting a fragile 2 prizer on your bench may not be worth it just to be able to use a Glass Trumpet. As for the actual evolutions, well, they're a bit of a mixed bag. Each one is a Stellar Terra type, so it retains its original typing and gains the Terra tag. Most of them have 270 HP, some have 280, the ones you would expect to be naturally bulkier. Some synergize well, others less well, but if you're committed, a full field with every kind of evolution is technically possible, but probably terrible. All of the evolutions' attacks are also very similar. Most of them feature an attack for 1 energy of their type and 1 colorless energy, and a Terra attack needing 3 different energies from among the evolution types. For the original trio of Flareon, Vaporeon, and Jolteon, all 3 of them need a water, electric, and fire energy for their Terra attacks. All 3 Terra attacks are the same, 280 damage, and this Pokemon cannot attack next turn. It's a pretty good damage number which can kill things like V-Stars, so these attacks aren't terrible. Jolteon has free retreat, so it can easily pivot out after attacking, but both Flareon and Vaporeon have a retreat cost of 2, so you will need some help to move them if you want to retain your energies. The first attacks are all interesting. Flareon deals 130 damage and accelerates 2 energy of any type from your deck, just like Temporal Force's Miraidon. Vaporeon deals 60 damage to all of your opponent's EX Pokemon, and Jolteon deals 60 damage, but you can choose to discard 2 energies from your bench to add an extra 90 damage for each, meaning it caps out at 240 damage. It's easy to see how these 3 can work well together, and they're the most likely way for an Eevee fan to build a deck that can actually perform. You can open up with either Flareon's Burning Charge to accelerate some energy, or Vaporeon's Heavy Squall to soften up your opponent's EXs, then bring in Jolteon to finish them off with a Flash Spear. So far, the Flareon-Jolteon combo has seen some play in Japan where these cards have been legal for a while, but usually the Vaporeon is left out of the party. It could come back once the last of the Vs rotate and its spread attack is more impactful, but for now, it would probably be better paired with Glaceon. Glaceon gets one of the more useful pair of attacks in this batch of evolutions. Its first attack costs 1 water and 1 colorless, and deals 110 damage to the opponent's active Pokemon, and 30 to one of their benched Pokemon. Its Terra attack is where things get really interesting. For 1 grass, 1 water, and 1 dark energy, Glaceon EX can knock out any Pokemon with exactly 6 damage counters, or 60 damage on it. Just like Roaring Moon EX, this is an effect, so it doesn't matter what Pokemon it is or how much HP it has left, it is knocked out. Naturally, this pairs well with Vaporeon, spreading 60 damage to all the opponent's EXs, then Glaceon can come in and start picking up kills. However, this combo only works against decks that actually play EX Pokemon, so it may be too inconsistent to see regular play. Instead, I can see Glaceon being more likely to team up with things like Frostlass, Uxie, Monkey Dory, or even Iron Valiant EX, as they can all set up the needed damage counters for the knockout without relying on your opponent playing a specific kind of deck. The other half of the Sinnoh pairing, Leafeon EX, is a bit of a mixed bag. Its first attack costs 1 grass and 1 colorless energy, as is the pattern, and deals 60 damage for each energy attached to all of your opponent's Pokemon. It's a very powerful attack, but it does rely on your opponent's decisions to really get the most out of it. And anyone who's played a deck featuring Tealmask Gogapon or a Spathra EX can tell you how frustrating that can be at times. It also doesn't help that if you knock out your opponent's active, there are probably some energies going with it, so you're reducing your damage as the game goes on. Leafeon's Terra attack costs 1 grass, 1 fire, and 1 water energy, deals 230 damage to the opponent, and heals 100 damage from all your benched Pokemon. The heal is unlikely to come up too often, as it's rare a Pokemon doesn't get one-shot these days, and 230 damage isn't a huge payoff for such a steep energy requirement. I don't actually even think grass decks will run this, but some evolution focused decks may want it as an option. While most of the evolutions we've looked at so far have either worked together or needed their own deck built around them, Espeon EX is a solid addition that can slot into any Psychic deck, especially if they already run Monkey Dory. Unlike the other evolutions we've looked at so far, Espeon, Umbreon, and Sylveon all require 3 energy for their first attack. In Espeon's case, that's 1 Psychic and 2 colorless. Psych Out deals 160 damage and discards a random card from your opponent's hand. Decent damage, decent effect. Amethyst requires a Grass, Psychic, and Dark energy, and has the exact same effect as TM Devolution. The Grass energy requirement can be sidestepped with Sparkling Crystal, and many Psychic decks already run Dark energy for Monkey Dory, so this could slot neatly into a Gardevoir or Banette build as a nice option for certain matchups. Or you could just use the Grass energy anyway, it's not really a huge deal. Sylveon EX is a reprint of the Surging Spark Sylveon EX, or 1 Psychic and 2 colorless. Magical Charm deals 160 damage, and it makes the opponent's active Pokemon deal 100 less damage next turn. Angelite costs 1 Water, Lightning, and Psychic energy, and lets you shuffle 2 of your opponent's benched Pokemon and everything attached to them back into the deck. I have seen some Sylveon play popping up here and there, but honestly this deck hasn't really taken off. Setting everything up is quite a lot to ask, and ultimately you aren't taking prizes by shuffling things back into the deck. Similarly, the reduced damage is easily played around by your opponent simply switching out. It's a fun card and the deck can be interesting, but personally I don't see it becoming particularly prevalent in the meta. Umbreon is the final evolution, and just like in Evolving Skies, this one is already carrying plenty of hype. With eye-watering prices for the full art version, if you enjoy using this, you're probably going to be stuck with the base version for a while. Moon Mirage costs 1 dark and 2 colorless energies, and like both Sylveon and Espeon deals 160 damage. The bonus effect this time is confusing the opponent. Not great. Onyx is the more tempting part of Umbreon, allowing you to simply take a prize card for 1 lightning, 1 psychic, and 1 dark energy. Personally, I don't really know how to judge this one. Doesn't slot neatly into any of the existing dark decks, so you're probably going to be building a bespoke deck or using it in an evolution deck. But setting this up at the end of the game or setting it up multiple times throughout the game is asking quite a lot. So we'll have to wait and see if someone finds the magic formula, but I expect it to be a fun card to build around. As expected, each Eevee card has a full art and they're all gorgeous, but pull rates being what they are and prices going absolutely crazy, I expect a lot of us will have to miss out. Each evolution also has a non-EX version, but none of them are too crazy. At most, there'll probably be an option in a dedicated Eevee deck to get through things like Mimikyu. In hushed tones around the world, people whisper the name of the latest terror to the Pokemon TCG, Budew. That's right, Budew. As a baby Pokemon, Budew has 30 HP, 0 retreat cost, and its attack does not require any energy. Itchy Pollen deals 10 damage and prevents your opponent from playing any item cards next turn. Items are a crucial part of every Pokemon TCG deck, and veterans of the game will remember the old days of Seismitoad item locks taking over the meta, so understandably this card has people worried. However, with the reclassification of tool cards, item locks aren't what they once were. We've already had Burnett EX in the format all this time, and only recently has it started to see play. So personally, I think people are a bit too worried about this card. Now don't get me wrong, this card will win games on its own. Sometimes a hand will not be able to play through an item lock, but we do have a lot of options now. TM Evolution can help Stage 2 decks set up through an item lock, and you can search it with Arven. Grand Tree does the same, and you can search it with Chorus's Tenacity. Even Pokemon League Headquarters can make things difficult for Budew, making it need an energy for its attack. Using an attack to item lock also means you need to go second if you want to use it as soon as possible. That means your opponent gets an entire turn of items before you can set up the lock, by which time it might be too late. As soon as something like a Miraidon player sees the Budew in the active, you can bet they'll be blowing through generators like nobody's business. Even when looking at the deck lists coming out of Japan since this card has been legal, sometimes the winning decks have it, other times they don't. But outside of the inclusion of Budew, it's the same old suspects at the top. No new decks have sprung up trying to take advantage of it, aside from a weird Budew Dusk Noir build that I've seen, but it doesn't seem to do that well. Whether or not it even features in winning decks seems completely coincidental. Ultimately, I think good players and good deck builders will quickly adjust to Budew, and as such it won't be as powerful. But against less experienced players, bad hands, or less optimized decks, it will definitely steal some games. The only other new card I can see featuring in the current meta is Regigigas. This one is super simple. 4 colorless energy, 100 damage. But if the opponent's active is a Terra Pokemon, it deals 330 damage, enough to one-shot almost every Terra Pokemon in the game. While the energy cost is steep, a few decks can slot a single copy of Regigigas in without much issue. Lugia can accelerate the energy with Archeops, Chien-Pao can do it with Baxcalibur, and decks running the Terra package can even use Glass Trumpet to charge it up. You could see it as a one-off in the Regi-focused deck using the other Regigigas' Ancient Wisdom to charge it up in a single turn with a double colorless energy, or you might even see it in some other decks using Crispin to help get that last bit of energy on it, only needing a couple of turns to set up. It's a simple, effective, single prize attacker. Expect to see it pop up here and there throughout the format. While most of this set focuses on the evolutions, one other new X does stand out as something that could potentially join the meta in its own new deck. Tyranitar EX gets a second version, but this time it isn't a Terra, it's a Dark type. For just 1 colorless energy, Tyranitar can use Grind, which deals 50 damage for each energy attached to it. Naturally, any method of quickly accelerating energy would pair well with this. Baxcalibur is the obvious choice, with the only limit being the number of energies in your deck. Xatu could pair well, giving you draw as well as energy. Even something like Quaquaval letting you attach multiple times a turn could work. Definitely a card I think will see experimentation. Having to consistently recycle large amounts of energy onto a stage 2 Pokemon will be a challenge to sustain throughout a match, so I expect this to be a rogue deck at best. A few other EX Pokemon make their debut in this set, but honestly, they aren't great. Most are from various Japanese starter deck products which we haven't had released yet in the West, and as such are around the same power level as most of the other Ace Pokemon featured in these kinds of products. Snorlax X could be fun to play at locals if you like coin flips, potentially outputting 360 damage a turn if you're lucky. Lugia could see some play in some control decks, letting you discard energies from your opponent's Pokemon. Otherwise though, these don't seem too good. Like most versions of the Slowpoke evolutions, Slowking has an unusual attack. For 1 water and 2 colorless energies, Slowking's Forgive and Forget deals 70 damage and lets you put 2 energies attached to your opponent's active Pokemon back into their hand. It's not fantastic, but I could see some players trying to build a deck around this effect, and if they pull it off, it will be annoying. But with so many decks running Tealmusk Ogerpon, this kind of effect is simply giving them more fuel to draw more cards, so I don't think this will ever be a meta pick. We have a late addition to the Festival Grounds archetype, which I love to play, but Seeking leaves something to be desired. For a single colorless energy, Seeking deals 60 damage and lets you draw 2 cards. Like all the other Festival lead attackers, if Festival Grounds is in play, it can attack twice, dealing 120 damage and drawing you 4 cards. Let's get it out there, the damage sucks. The only reason you'd be playing this is the card draw, and this has intrigued some Festival players. I have played a lot of Festival though, and with Thwacky being able to get you any card you want every turn, I have never felt like the deck needed more card draw. If you're low on cards, Thwacky can get you Professor's Research, which gets you 7 more cards. So for me, I don't think this is worth including. Don't worry if you do love Festival Grounds though. Journey Together has something which I think makes this deck much, much better. Watch this space. Outside of what we've discussed so far, it's the fairly standard collection of random Pokemon that will never see the light of day outside of playgrounds and binders. While this is a special set, so it probably won't be as impactful as a standard set, I was hoping for a little more, especially after Shrouded Fable introduced so many useful new cards to the meta. Moving on to the trainer cards in the set, we find a similar story. Most of them are reprints, some are new, none are game-breakingly good. 2 new Ace Spec cards debut in the set. Max Rod lets you grab any 5 Pokemon or basic energies from the discard pile and add them to your hand, basically acting like a Super Rod had a baby with a superior energy retrieval. This is strong, but there aren't many decks that specifically want the cards returned to their hand rather than to the deck. Goldengo is unlikely to swap Energy Search Pro for this, so it's most likely to pop up in Chien Pao, which isn't particularly strong right now. Treasure Tracker lets you choose 5 tool cards from your deck and add them to your hand, unlikely to see very much play outside of specific Mimi-focused decks like Revavrumiax or Garboda. Black Belt's Practice is the trainer card I'm expecting to have the biggest impact from the set. The effect is simple, 40 extra damage against your opponent's EX Pokemon. Some decks already have tried Kieran to fix damage ranges at times, so this could easily slot into any deck that needs a little extra push to take some big knockouts. Larry's Skill is a supporter that lets you search a Pokemon, another supporter, and a basic energy out of your deck at the cost of discarding your current hand. This one is interesting as you can play it when your hand is already empty and get 3 useful cards of your choice with no drawback, but decks that use it will need to be regularly emptying their hand to get the most out of it. I could see it seeing some play, but I don't think it will become a staple in every deck. Amorous is another draw supporter with a slightly different spin. You can immediately draw 4 cards, but if you have 5 or more cards in your hand at the end of your turn, you have to discard them all. For decks that are able to play a lot of their cards every turn, such as basic Pokemon, energies, and items, this could be very powerful. But if your hand gets clogged up with things you can't play immediately, it can be very costly, discarding a lot of your tech cards. It remains to be seen if this price is worth the benefit. Roto Stick is a twist on the Pokegear, letting you look at the top 4 cards of your deck and adding any supporters you find there to your hand. This could see play, but most decks run somewhere between 8 and 12 supporters, so the chance of finding one in your top 4 is already quite low, and I expect most lists that want to run this will just use Pokegear. It's just better. Even if you do find more than one supporter, you can still only play 1 a turn, so why bother? Habanberry is another tool card in the Berry family. Each one reduces damage from a specific type of attack, and this time it's normal types. These aren't great. I can only really see them being used if we end up in a truly tier 0 format where a specific single type deck dominates. Think every single other person you see is playing Terrapagos, then you'll use this. And that's it. Anything else new I honestly don't really think is good enough to talk about. But there is a lot more in this set. From just opening packs of Prismatic Evolutions, you could get the cards you need to create a playable but not optimal version of Dragapult, Festival Lead, Hydrapple, Future Box, Iron Thorns, Ancient Box, Great Tusk Mill, and Terrapagos. The Dunsparce draw engine can slot into any deck that you want, and there's plenty of staple trainers used across the entire format like Night Stretcher, Area Zero Underdepths, Professor's Research, Buddy Poffins, Earthen Vessels, Crispin, Professor Turo's Scenario, Rescue Board, and more. The A-Spec reprints include Prime Catcher, Sparkling Crystal, and Max Belt. There really wouldn't be a better time to get into the game if it weren't for all the price gouging and scalping happening with this set. If you can find it at retail price and you don't already have a good collection of competitive cards, buy this set. It will definitely give you a good start. Go to locals and just start playing the game. But will it have an earth-shattering impact on the current meta? I have to say that it won't. Aside from the evolutions and maybe Tyranitar, I fully expect you'll be seeing the exact same decks you've been seeing for the past few months with almost no changes. If you're tired of Regidrago dominating, fed up with Gardevoir's long turns, or sick of Dusknoir blowing everything up, well, Prismatic Evolutions isn't really going to help. But at least rotation is soon, right? Do you agree with my views? Do you think I'm stupid for not thinking Budew will be good? Let me know in the comments. Tell me your thoughts on this set, and I will see you in the next video.